and all married women except those your right hands possess was revealed. So in other words, the revelation of the verse was in connection to married women, and Allah said it was okay. You gave up this conversation. You allowed him. I objected to him coming into this debate.
Excuse me.
And you let him in.
I came in only one
Surah,
thing.
right.
Because Bob was not telling the truth about Prophet Muhammad, and I refuse to stand here while he insults him at the level that he does, which shows, by the way, the unethical, uncivilized mind of Bob.
Is it insulting to point out that someone took slaves? Is that an insult or a statement of fact?
You did go to Bob.
It's a statement of fact. They are insulted because they're better than their prophet, and they themselves would not take slaves, which just goes to show that Muhammad is a ridiculous example to follow, and that we should be following Christ, who at a time when slavery was normal, never took a slave.
Christ enslaved people as God. Written in the whole Old Testament. Your God, Jesus, allowed slaves.
Where?
In the Old Testament.
Where?
And don't give this
Numbers 31, we just said it.
Yeah, read it. And,
So-
don't go on this thing about Old Covenant, New Covenant. If Jesus is God,
So, ladies
that
and
means
gentlemen,
he didn't know what he was talking
He
about.
asked me to show you from the Quran where Allah permits the taking of female sex slaves. Here it is. Are you listening? Those who have been wives of your sons proceeding from your loins, the two sisters in wedlock at one and the same time, except for what is past, for Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. He's giving a list of women you cannot have sex with. Right? Surah 4, Ayah 24. And in Ayah 24 it goes on to say, also prohibited are women already married. Listen to the next words.
Right.
Except those your right hands possess.
Marrying them.
Your right hands possess
what
is an example of slavery.
Right. Now let me answer this if he allows me. Let's read the verse. And forbidden to you are married...
Oh wait, are we not doing interruptions?
I thought you were finished, sorry, I apologize. I thought you were finished.
Okay.
Let's start again.
So do we agree not to interrupt one another?
Yes, I thought you were finished.
Do you apologise for your earlier
I do
interruptions?
apologise.
All right.
But, right, now, let me read this. And forbidden to you are married women, except such as your right hand possesses. This has Allah enjoined on you, and allowed you are those beyond that, and you seek them by means of your property, marrying them. So in other words, the people in the right hand possess, you must marry them. So this is what Bob doesn't show you, that you marry them, right? That you marry them,
Not committing fornication.
and not committing fornication. This shows that Bob has lied to you, has deceived you. He has deliberately not shown you the truth about the Quran. So let me read it again, right?
Yes, let him read it again. He's just hung himself. He's just hung himself.
Alhamdulillah, right? And forbidden to you are married women, except such as your right hand possesses.
Yes, married women, except that your right hand possesses.
This has Allah enjoined on you, and allowed you, and those beyond that you seek them by means of your property. Marry them properly, and not committing fornication, and for the benefit of you receive from them. Give them their dowries as fixed, and there is no blame on you what you do by mutual agreement after fixing the dowry. Surely Allah is all-knowing.
Okay.
So where have I hung myself? This person,
You're gonna tell him.
Bob, no, let me finish now. This person, Bob, has deceived you like Lucifer, right? Did not mention any of this to you. He said that he took them as sex slaves. Look, Quran does not say that. It says you must marry them properly, give them dowry, no fornication. Alhamdulillah.
Right, so now let me reply.
This proves Bob.
Let me reply. Let's read it carefully. Listen carefully.
How more careful can you read it?
Also prohibited are women already married. So Allah is saying that you can't have sex with women that are married, right? We're all clear about that.
Where's sex
Oh,
coming
stop,
into
stop
this?
interrupting.
Where's sex?
Stop interrupting.
Not in the Arabic.
Women already married, except those whom your right hands possess. So if a woman that is married, you possess, that means that Muhammad is sanctioning adultery. It gets worse, ladies and gentlemen. And then it goes on. Listen, thus hath Allah ordained against you prohibitions. So he's laying out boundaries. Except for these. Now, except for these means those that I mentioned earlier. So in other words, he's not talking about the same category of people. He's not talking about the ones that your right hands possess. It says, except for these, all others are lawful, provided ye seek them in marriage. So in other words, what the Quran is actually saying is that all women, except for certain familial lines of marriage, and the slaves that you possess, are prohibited in marriage. But apart from those groups, anyone else you can marry. That's actually what the text is saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is not that I am lying to you, it is him that's lying to you. I'll read it again. Thus Allah hath ordained prohibitions against you, except for these. In other words, those that I was talking about earlier, all others are lawful, provided you seek them in marriage. So in other words, it doesn't include the ones that your right hands possess. I'm not playing fast and loose with a text. He is playing fast and loose with a text.
Bob, give the reference.
No.
There,
First of all,
Surah what?
except for these, all others.
It's the same one you read.
Yes, all others.
So let me now correct Bob.
It's not in the Arabic.
No. First of all, he does not know Arabic.
Do you?
Yes, I know Arabic. Alhamdulillah. Right? Okay? Sex is not mentioned in the Arabic. This is a deliberate teaching lie. And let me read it again to you. Now, maybe Bob, and forgive me, Bob, for saying this, but maybe Bob needs a lesson in the English language. Okay? So let's read it from the Quran in the English language. Right? And forbidden to you are married women. Pretty understandable. Except such as your right hand possesses.
So there's the adultery.
Right? No.
There's the adultery.
This has this about what your right hand possesses. This is about this. Right?
Those that are married, that your right hands possess.
No.
There's the adultery.
You said you wouldn't interrupt.
But you interrupted me.
No, I didn't interrupt you.
You did.
I fulfilled my promise. Right?
Okay, no interruption from now on.
Right?
No,
I had my
he
cameras
interrupted
there.
me. He can't
Right.
complain if I interrupt.
And forbidden to you are married women, except such as your right hand possesses. That means they're allowed to you. Right? This has
go for it.
enjoined on you and allowed you, or those beyond that if you seek them by means of your property, meaning the slaves, right, marry them. Your property, meaning meaning those who are in your right hand possessions, marry them properly, right, and not committing fornication. That means you cannot have sex with them. You must marry them.
Giving the dowry
Right?
as well.
And the dowry. So Bob, I'm sorry, either he doesn't understand English, which is obvious he doesn't, and he certainly doesn't understand Arabic, right? So this proves that those slaves of war, the same as the Old Testament, those slaves of war were allowed to marry. They must be married. They had to be married. There was no fornication allowed with them. This is the actual what the Quran says, and so unfortunately, Bob is lying to you again. It's in English. If you want to, I can show you in Arabic as well.
Okay, so ladies and
So
gentlemen,
as you can see, Bob is lying. This is the Quran. I've read it to you. Chapter 4. You can read it for yourselves, and you can come back and ask Bob why he needed to lie.
so ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear who is lying. Read the verse again. It says,
1,000 times.
oh, there you go interrupting.
Right, read this.
There you go interrupting. There you go
I'm giving you my
interrupting.
preference.
Surah 4, ayah 24. Right? Let's just read it in its full context. Right? It starts in 23. Prohibited to you for marriage. So he's talking about who you can't marry. Or your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your fathers, your mother's sisters, brothers' daughters, sisters' daughters, foster's mothers, foster sisters, your wives, your mothers, your stepdaughters under you, guardianship, born of your wives to whom you have gone in. No prohibition if you have gone in. Those who have been wives of your sons, proceeding from your loins, and 2 sisters. So it is talking about sex. Because it's talking about those that you go into. It is talking about those that you go into. The concept of marriage is connected to sex in Islam. That's true for Christianity, it's true for Islam. It goes on. Wives of your sons, proceeding from your loins, and 2 sisters in wedlock at one and the same time, except for what is past, for Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. Then it introduces a break, it introduces a clause, it introduces a new section. It says also prohibited. So in other words, we're not talking about the earlier group, we're now talking about a new group. Also prohibited are women already married, except, so now it's introduced a new group, and the new group are those that your right hands possess. So in other words, these are married women that Muhammad is sanctioning sex with, or at best sanctioning marriage with, which means that Muhammad is sanctioning adultery in the Quran. Now notice the interruption. It goes on.
Thank you. That's what I was asking.
Thus hath Allah ordained prohibitions. So in other words, it's talking about what he's already done. The prohibitions against you. And then it says these words, except for these. So in other words, we're now not talking about the same group of people that we were previously talking about. We're now talking about a new group of people. So except for these, and then emphatically it says, all others are lawful, provided ye seek them in marriage. So therefore, it is not me that is lying about what the Quran is saying. It is him that is lying about what the Quran is saying.
I got the there's a commentary on that thing.
Yeah.
You're going in circles. Let the listeners just read the passage. It's very clear. Bob is introducing his own reading, his own interpretation. Now he's going to bring us ancient commentaries that we don't accept.
Yeah, I just want to read an ancient commentary, a classical commentary. Allah forbids Muslims to marry women who are already married, except slave girls. Ibn Kathir explains that Muslim men are prohibited from marrying women who are already married, with one notable exception: those whom you acquire through war. For you are allowed such women after making sure that they are not pregnant. Imam Ahmed recorded that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, we captured some women from the area of Atwaz who were already married, and we disliked having sexual relations with them because they were already had husbands. So we asked the Prophet about the matter, and this ayah was revealed. Consequently, we had sexual relations with the women. Their husbands were alive. That is, it is not marriage.
Okay, so here's it, the complete distinct thing. It explicitly says marry them.
Of women who were married. Of women who were married.
I'll turn. Explicitly says, Bob has read the text.
The Critical Quran by Robert Spencer. Oh my God. This man is so ignorant. When I debated with him, he has no knowledge of the Quran whatsoever. You're using this guy as your source?
No, I'm using Ibn Kathir and Abu Sa'id. I'm quoting classical Muslim commentators.
Either way, Bob is...
And you're embarrassed by it.
No, I'm not embarrassed at
You're
all.
embarrassed by it.
Hang on. You see,
So is it right to have sex with married women?
No, let me tell you something.
Answer that question.
Marry them.
Is it right to have sex with women who are already married? Is it right to have sex with women who are already married? Because the Quran is saying you can. That's adultery, and these women would not consent, and that's why it's...
Now, Bob, can I say something? And you won't interrupt.
Did David commit adultery?
Is David the moral example?
Firstly,
is he the moral example?
Is he not a
for
prophet?
Christians?
Did David commit adultery? And was he forgiven? No, don't. Irrelevant.
Are you talking?
Firstly, let me read it again. Because Bob
Muhammad's
is
supposed to be
twisting
perfect.
and influencing his own opinion on these verses, as they do with the Bible, as the four authors of the Gospels did. Right?
Trying to change the subject, ladies and gentlemen.
No. You see,
Wants to change the subject.
No. What Bob is? No. I'm not changing the subject. I'm giving a similarity. Right? That's what you do when you have dialogue. Right? First of all, this book of Spencer, who is uneducated, you can see you're a young man. You're not young enough to understand it. You're old enough to understand.
He's allowed to hold it if he wants
he
to.
He can hold it. He's been sarcastic, right? Okay, that's your training as a Christian. God help you, right? So
God help you too.
He's just holding a Quran. Why are you attacking him?
When you do this,
All he's doing is holding a Quran. Isn't that what you did when I was talking? He's criticizing you for doing what he did to me when I was talking. He held up a big passage and held it up there while I was talking. Or rather, the lack of content. It excludes any portion of text that might inspire rebellion or liberation.
Right?
So he's now criticizing you for doing his behavior, so he's criticizing himself.
Point taken.
We don't need to be slapping. We don't need to be slapping. We don't need to be slapping.
Right.
These are not slap. These are not affections. This is a sign of frustration. I know you're losing the argument, but calm down. I know you're losing the argument, but calm down.
I'm certainly not losing the argument. Right? So let me read this again.
Read it without any interruption.
This is from the Quran. This is from the Quran. This is what you're not understanding, but Bob knows, right? This is from the Quran. I'm forbidden to you, I'm going to read more than one verse now. I'm forbidden to you are married women, except such as your right hand possesses. Does that mean the right hand possesses, the Quran is talking about, is non-married women? Okay? This has Allah enjoined on you and allowed to you and those beyond that you seek them by means of your property, marrying them. This is the point Bob doesn't want you to hear. Marrying them properly and not committing fornication. That means you cannot rape them, you cannot have sex with them, you can't do anything to them. Right? This is what the Quran says. Right? And for the benefit, you receive them and give them their dowry as fixed, and there is no blame on you what you do by mutual agreement. That means mutual agreement means that the woman that the Muslim wants to marry must agree to the marriage on mutual agreement. Okay? After the fixing of your dowry, surely Allah is all-knowing one. And then let's read the next one. And whose of you cannot afford to marry freeing believing women, let him marry what your handwriting possesses, namely believing handmaids, and Allah knows your fate best, and all one from another. So marry them again. Allah says, marry them with the leave of their masters. That means you must have permission from their masters to marry them. Okay, so it wasn't about going and have like that. Families, yes.
Marry them with the permission of the family.
So let me reply to that.
Yeah. So no,
Can I reply to that?
No. Let me answer.
Remember, these women were already married.
No, they're not. See,
They were already married.
Ignoring what I just said. This is about those who are not married.
Doesn't say that.
Right? Okay? There's many things you're saying which doesn't say. Like sex, not in the Arabic, not in the English translation. You're putting
Sex is connected to marriage.
Right? You don't need to. Right? You don't need to do that. Right? So let me. And give them their dowries according to what is fair. They being chaste. So these women were chaste. Now listen to this. These women were chaste. That means they weren't married before. That means they didn't have husbands because they wouldn't be chaste.
That's not what
right?
chaste means.
Right?
Married people can be
Right?
chaste.
Right? And not committing fornication. Again, second time, Allah is saying, do not commit fornication. What part of that do you not understand, Bob? Do not have sex. Let me use your language. He says, do not have sex with them. Do not fornicate with them. This is what the Quran says, right? And not taking secret paramours. And if after that they are married, they are guilty of lewdness, they shall have half the punishment prescribed, right? So that means if a Muslim man commits adultery, fornication, he will be punished. So this absolutely destroys and disproves what Bob is trying to say. He's twisting the verses of the Quran. May Allah forgive him and may Allah have mercy on him. May Allah forgive him for insulting the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what Bob doesn't want. But anyhow, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so now let me. I've addressed his point multiple times.
As I did.
For the sake. Now notice he's interrupting and notice he's waving his Quran around. Like, notice he's exactly the thing he was abusing my younger brother for.
I didn't abuse him.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
brother?
Ladies in Christ, yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reality is, I've addressed the point. It clearly states
It does not.
those women who are married except those your right hands possess, which means that, and we read Ibn Kathir and the early Muslim commentators who point out that these women who were captured by Muhammad were already married when Muhammad's followers were having sex with them. They didn't want to have sex with them precisely because they were married. Can we read the quote again?
Yeah, sure.
I'll read it to you again. Allah forbids Muslims to marry women who are already married. Notice he's not even listening. Notice he's not even listening. Allah forbids Muslims to marry women who are already married, except. Did you hear that word? Except. Are you clear about that word? In other words, we are now talking about married women, except slave girls. Ibn Kathir explains that Muslim men are prohibited from marrying women who are already married, with one notable exception. Are we all clear that we are talking about married women? Those whom you acquire through war, for you allowed such women after making sure they are not pregnant. That's what Ibn Kathir says about the Quran. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, what you hear, ladies and gentlemen, is that Muhammad is permitting adultery at best. However, how many of you married women would want to have sex with the man who just killed your family? None of you would. Why? Because you're human beings. So we aren't talking about marriage, we're talking about ladies and gentlemen. It goes on. It goes on. Imam Ahmed recorded that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, we captured some women from the area of Artaz who were already married. Did you hear that, JC? Already married. So we are talking about married women. Okay. And we disliked having sexual relations with them. Did you hear the jiggy jiggy?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah? The sexual relations. We didn't like them, Muhammad. And it goes on to say, with them because of their husbands. In other words, their husbands were alive. This is from Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih Hadith from Bukhari. Muhammad is allowing his followers to married women. Ladies and gentlemen, so we asked the Prophet, so this is where Muhammad says No, you fools! Of course you don't have sex with them. This is where the mercy of mankind turns around and goes, why are you having sexual relations with them, you barbarians? That's what he's going to say, right? But listen to what Muhammad said. So we asked the Prophet about this, and the ayah was revealed from Surah 4, ayah 29, Surah 4, ayah 24, where it says, and all married women except those your right hands possess, was revealed. So in other words, the revelation of the verse was in connection to married women, and Allah said it was okay. I challenged them to find me where Jesus Christ commands, or the apostles command in the new covenant, something similar to what I've pointed out in the Quran.
Right, now let me again correct him. Can I hold up? Can I see that for a moment?
It's up to you.
Sure. It's in
This
chapter
book
4,
is by Robert Spencer.
and he quotes Ibn Kathir.
Robert Spencer, I've read all his books, including this.
Name one book.
Right, I have all of these, right? Robert Spencer is a white extremist.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
He's not even white.
He's not white. He's not white.
No, let me finish.
He's Armenian.
Let me finish.
Yes, I mean,
I have photographs with him, with the ADL, with other white supremacist organizations. I have photographs with him. Okay. Right? Okay?
Yes.
Right? He hates Islam. He hates Muslims. Right? So he wrote this incredibly uneducated book. He quotes from scholars who we don't always necessarily agree with. Right? That's all right. That's all right, as he will not agree with certain Christian scholars. Right? Secondly, the Quran makes it clear, which Bob is trembling on his feet because he can't answer it, that the Quran says twice, wives, make them your wives. Right? Do not fornicate. Do not have sex with them until you are married. This is the point Bob is completely oblivious to. He's ignoring this fact, right? But let me come back to the slaves issue, Bob, right? In the Old Testament, which Jesus is the God of the Old Testament, right? Jesus also allowed Moses to take married women and have sex with them according to the Old Testament, right? And Bob's excuse is, we're not from the Old Covenant, we're from the New Covenant. Was Jesus not the all-knowing God? Did he not know the future? Did he not know that his commandments would not work, that he would fail in his mission?
Thank you.
Did he not know that enslaving women, having sex with them, capturing them, enslaving them, Moses can take them, Abraham took them? Did he not know this? That now he came in the new covenant and said, uh-oh, I'm sorry, I got it all wrong, forget the old covenant. That's what Bob is saying. Well, therefore, why would we believe in a God who didn't know the future? Who didn't know that his teachings in Leviticus, that his teachings in Deuteronomy, that his teachings in all these laws,
Number
that he didn't know.
46, Ibn Kathir.
That's what Bob
You
is
pull it up,
saying.
bro. You pull it up, bro. You pull it
Okay?
up.
Moses was allowed.
Ibn Kathir.
Where's that verse? I can't remember.
Numbers 31.
Numbers 31.
17.
Moses allowed. Moses said, Jesus said to Moses, kill all men who've had sex, who had been in marriages. Kill all women who had been in a relationship. Take for yourself the virgins, right? Take for yourself those girls who are not married and the virgins. This is the Bible he's talking about, right? Where permission was granted to Moses, right? To take young girls who were virgins, which would have been about 11 years old, right? So Moses had permission to have, and you in your language.
But later, Moses kills them all.
Right? Yeah, no, you can finish, right?
Yeah.
So.
Sorry.
Right, you ruined my
Stop distracting. You took him off his flow. Let me finish.
No.
I want to talk.
No, then you can say something, right? So Moses was allowed to take young 11-year-old girls as his possession and share them with his companions. This is what Jesus gave permission to Moses, to all the prophets of God, right? But suddenly the new covenant right? The new covenant. God forgot all that he did. He didn't realize. He said, oh my God, I made a big mistake. I'm not the all-knowing God. All my teachings are wrong. This is what you are saying.
Can I reply now?
But in the Quran, and then I'll let you finish. In the Quran, again, in chapter 4, verse 25 onwards, 24, 25, 26, 27, two times just mentioned, marry them. Do not commit fornication. Marry them properly. Make them your wives. This is the beauty and the splendor of the Quran.
Okay, allow me to reply.
Wait.
Hurry up.
Yeah, wait. What did you teach?